Good. Happy Sunday afternoon, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this Sunday afternoon edition of This Week with Riley King. We got a lot of political news to get to this Sunday afternoon, so let's begin right now. First up, Joe Biden could visit Texas as soon as this week, White House press secretary says. As Texas continues to recover in the fallout with severe weather that damaged the state's power grid and leaving millions without electricity and clean drinking water, the White House press secretary Jen Psaki said President Joe Biden could make a visit there as soon as this week. Biden approved a major disaster declaration for Texas on Saturday, opening up federal funds to 77 of the state's 254 counties. Relief can be used for grants for temporary housing and home repairs, low-cost loans to cover unsecured property losses, and other programs to help individuals and business owners recover from the efforts of the disaster, according to the White House. However, Texas Governor Greg Abbott originally asked for a declaration for the entire state. After the declaration was announced, Abbott said that partial approval is an important first step. The severe weather across the country has also created havoc on distributing the COVID-19 vaccine to states that were impacted, delaying 6 million doses. But Psaki said that help is on the way. More money for schools unnecessary if U.S. not forced on focus on reopening. President Joe Biden needs to provide a strong support on Center for Disease Control and Prevention guidelines for reopening schools instead of waiting for more money to be approved by Congress. Rep. Steve Scalise, a Republican from LA, said Sunday. Biden's plan to return students to schools with another coronavirus relief package, which would provide additional money to the state and local governments, is unnecessary, he said on the ABC this week. He also said the White House is not mandating that the states do anything on this. They have issued guidance from the CDC. Are you suggesting the president is ordering local school districts to reopen? Also, the White House press secretary said that's the goal of schools to reopen and have a plan. A recent Quinnipiac poll found that 68% of Americans polled said that they support Biden's $1.9 trillion relief package. Scalise said that if Americans know the exact of the upspent dollars in the relief, they may answer differently. Scalise refused to say explanatory whether Trump should accept any of the blame. Democrats voting rights advocates blast new Georgia election bill. The 48-page House bill was introduced Thursday and has no Democratic sponsors. Republicans in Georgia State House have introduced a 48-page omnibus bill that, if enhanced, would make sweeping changes to the state's election process. Republicans on the committee argued the bill, which trickles multiple areas of election law, would help restore faith in Georgia's elections. But Democrats and voting rights advocates blasted it as a voter supremacist bill and questioned the motive behind the rush to bring it before the committee just hours after it was introduced. During the hearings on Thursday and Friday, Republicans defended the bill, HB 531, as critical in restoring public trust in elections and bolstering security. According to a January poll, just under 40% of Georgia voters believe there was widespread voter fraud in the last presidential election. Among Republicans alone, it's 75%. According to the nonpartisan Ryan Center for Justice, as of early February, at least 165 bills that would restrict voting access are being considered in state legislatures nationwide. The Law and Policy Organization asserts these bills are an unmistakable response to the unfolded and dangerous lies about fraud and followed the 2020 election. Those false fraud claims were spearheaded by former President Donald Trump, and disappointingly directed at the battleground states he lost, including Georgia. Amber McReynolds, an election administrator, expert, and CEO of National Vote at Home Institute, told ABC News that Georgia's elections are more accessible than many other states, but that doesn't mean they're perfect. McReynolds, an unaffiliated voter, has met with Republicans in General Assembly as they're crafting election legislative and testified Friday about HB 531. While there are portions of the bill that election administrators lauded, the section related to early, in-person, and absentee by mail voting are getting significant pushback from advocates. The legislation would bar countries from holding voting on the 2 Sundays that fall within early 3-week period and only allow it on 1 Saturday. Currently, countries are requiring to have locations open weekdays plus 1 Saturday, but they can opt to add more days if they fall within the set period, which ends the Friday before an election. Fleming said this would bring uniformity to early voting. She noted that Souls to the Polls events held by black churches in the large metro areas have been effective get-out-the-vote mechanisms, but eliminating Sunday early voting would also crucial these. During the 2020 cycle, the state election board passed an emergency rule allowing counties to implement drop boxes while this bill would be the first actively section drop box. It would also add limitations to their use going forward, requiring they be inside early voting locations and only accessible when those locations are open. Richmond County Election Director testified Friday that if the drop boxes have to be at these locations, they should be at least be outside so they're easier to access. Cobb County Election Director concerned in her testimony. McReynolds said that voters across the political spectrum like drop boxes, cautioning against restricting their accessibility. Under the bill, voters would not be able to use the drop boxes on election day or the 3 days preceding it. Putting ballots in the mail during that time, though, is risky, as they must be received by 7 p.m. on election day. In Georgia, the largest percentage of rejected absentee ballots are the ones that arrive late. The bill would also add new identification requirements for absentee voting and limit the signature matching process. Voters are currently required to show a photo ID when voting in person, but not by mail. HB 531 would require absentee voters to provide their driver's license or state identification number on their application at the oath envelope that contain the ballot. If a voter does not have this type of identification, however, they must include a photocopy of another form of acceptable identification with the application. Fleming said 97% of Georgia voters have a driver's license or state ID, though it's unclear where that figure is from. But even if it's just 3% of voter lacking, this additionally hurdles facing even a small amount of voter matter if we truly wanting everyone to be able to vote. A staff attorney testifying on behalf of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and Southern Poverty Law Center Action Fund. But Ryan Germany, the general counsel in Rathberg's office, said if the state doesn't switch from the subjective to an objective way of verifying absentee ballots, election officials could become targets as some were after November. The bottom line, according to McReynolds, is that election legislation must hit a multiple priorities, including fairness, accessibility, security, transparency, and equality. Friday's hearing ended without a motion on the bill, and another hearing will be held on Monday tomorrow. And that does it for this Sunday edition of Politics with Riley King. That does it for this Sunday edition of This Week with Riley King. Thank you for joining us for this Sunday edition of This Week with Riley King. Have a great rest of your Sunday, everyone. See you back here next Sunday for another edition of This Week with Riley King. And have a great week ahead of you, everybody. Goodbye.